Hi everyone, welcome to Here We Are, Brattleboro's community talk show. I'm Wendy O'Connell. We are a weekly show, and this week our guest is Rabbi Amita Jarmon. She is the rabbi of our local Brattleboro area Jewish community congregation here in West Brattleboro. She's a citizen of both the United States and Israel, where she lived for many years in Jerusalem. She studied physical therapy at Tel Aviv University, and she went on to attend the Reconstructionist Rabbinical College in Philadelphia. Excellent to see you today, Rabbi. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for inviting me to be here.
Yes, I've wanted to have you on for quite a while, but you didn't arrive in Brattleboro until about a year and a half ago, is that right?
December 1st, 2021.
21.
So it's been a year and
Yes.
3 months?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And you grew up in Amherst, Massachusetts.
Mm-hmm. Just down the road.
Yes, just down the road. And you went to school, did you go to public school there?
I did.
Yeah.
I went to Amherst Regional High School. In fact, we're having a big reunion coming up in June. Well, not that big of a one.
They're all big when you get to a certain age, right? When you were living in Amherst, you had a family and you had a couple siblings, I think?
I grew up with my parents and two sisters.
Mm-hmm. And in your family, did you go to temple? Were you bat mitzvahed?
When I was growing up in Amherst, there was no synagogue and there was no rabbi. There was a Jewish community of Amherst, and we used to rent spaces at UMass or Amherst College for the big holidays. And we also rented spaces in various places around town for our Hebrew school. But it was a very small community, and we would hire a cantor for the high holidays. And we and my family it wasn't a religious family, but I got some Jewish education.
And did you learn Hebrew during that time, or was that later?
I learned the alphabet and how to what we call decode. In other words, that you could pronounce it, but you don't really understand that much. But actually, at Amherst High School, at Amherst, maybe it was junior high, there was one of the members of the Jewish community that had spent a year in Israel. She was teaching in junior high. I had 2 years of Hebrew. I was learning French. Je parle français, un peu. But I also got to learn Hebrew, 4 or 5 days a week. So I had a basis. There I learned. I think I was 8th and 9th grade.
Well, that's unusual.
It is.
That's very unusual. So you had that feeling. And when you were during that time, what were you interested in growing up as a kid?
Well, I'll say I was extremely studious. I don't know if I was interested, but I was very engaged in my schoolwork, especially social studies and English. And I was also in the outing club, and I spent a lot of time hiking, biking, canoeing, and also I like to sing. I was in the choir. That's the only voice training I've ever had, is from John Maggs at Amherst High School, but he did a good job with us. And I was in the chorus of Fiddler on the Roof. I didn't have a part. So when it came to Brattleboro, I already knew it by heart when I was 10.
Did you?
Yeah.
That's very cool. Yeah, we're going to get to that because that was a very exciting thing that happened this year that you took part in. And after high school, you went to Israel. Is that correct?
Yeah, so I should just say that before that, when I was in high school, in fact, from the time I was 13, I started going to this camp, to a Jewish camp that was Israel-oriented and kibbutz-oriented and not religious. In fact, it was a socialist camp. So it was that's where I got my Jewish identity, was going to that camp, which I went to for 8 years, which my sisters then came to. And it was with other friends from that camp that we went to Israel. So it wasn't just out of the blue. It was, right. And my parents didn't realize when they sent me to the camp that it was going to end up bringing me to Israel. They didn't realize what they were allowing me to do.
But that's amazing. That really kindled a spark in you, it sounds like.
Definitely. It was the camp experience, and summer camp is the way to, it's an important part of life, and I would say for Jews, it's essential for Jewish identity to go to summer camp, because you're not going to get it living in Brattleboro, really. There's limited what you can get.
In the Northeast in general.
Yeah, unless you're living in a religious environment.
Yeah. So that's probably what drew you to going to Israel and finding...
100%.
Uh-huh. And what was that year like for you?
It was transformational. It was really important. When I arrived, I remember like landing and saying, "This place is all full of rocks and dirt, and I don't like." It's like I'm not going to be brainwashed to think that I should live here. You know, this place is foreign. But I came to really feel at home there.
Yeah, you did. And you came back, though, to America.
Well, yeah, I came back to go to college as was expected, and I did that for a couple years, but didn't know really what I wanted to do. Anyway, I went back to Israel.
And you went back to Israel. Could you talk a little bit, Rabbi, about, like you say, the topography, geography was foreign to you. You didn't know how you were going to make your home there. How did you acclimate yourself? What were the things that really supported that for you?
Well, I mean, I was on a program with friends, so we weren't really integrated into society. I was living in a dorm and learning all day, and learning Hebrew and learning Jewish history and history of Israel, but then we went to kibbutz. So I was on a kibbutz for 5 months, which, if people don't know, the communal settlements that really were the basis of the foundation of the state. And so when I was on the kibbutz, we each had like a family for the 5 months we were there. That we lived with our friends, but we had like an adoptive family. And the family that I chose, I wanted people who didn't speak any English, and they were Polish Jews who had come over, like escaping like just before Hitler. So they'd lost their families, and like I mean, I loved them. They were very idealistic, and they were farmers, and they were full of life and joy, and they'd left behind a lot of sorrow and struggle. And so this is this is going to take us very far afield, but I was very inspired by these people and by that whole way of life, the socialist way of life, and I just loved the kibbutz.
Yes.
The kibbutz.
Yes. And you were there for how long?
I was on that kibbutz for 5 months, and then when I returned to Israel 3 years later, I left Israel and I returned and immigrated. I went to another kibbutz for 5 months on the Lebanese border, and then I realized I'm not ready to stay on kibbutz for the rest of my life. So that's when I went to Tel Aviv University to study physical therapy.
And how did you get to physical therapy?
Well, it's because when I left Israel initially, I went to 2 years at Barnard of liberal arts, and then I moved to Berkeley, California, and worked at the Center for Independent Living, which is the first center for independent living in the country, I think. And if you haven't seen the film Crip Camp, it's about like the roots of the disability rights movement. So I worked at that center, and through my exposure to the differently abled or physically differently abled community, I got very passionate about disability rights, and everyone said, go be a disability rights lawyer, which is really maybe would have made more sense for me, but I ended up saying, let me do something practical.
Yeah.
It really was not something that anyone would have expected, nor did I expect myself, because I ran, but I wasn't really an athlete, so it was sort of a strange choice.
It's an interesting way to come at it, though. Very interesting. And I know that sort of has carried through for you, that kind of caregiving, I guess, to people.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's been, my life has been like cycles of, because I did physical therapy after I graduated from Tel Aviv, and during that time I moved to Jerusalem and commuted to school, because I didn't like living in Tel Aviv. Back in my 20s, I started to get into Jewish practice and to going to services and to praying and to feeling the roots of that it's not just a culture. There is a religion, which is, so then when I left Israel, I moved to Philadelphia because I needed a community that was progressive, creative, and committed. Okay, I wasn't going to move to Muncie, New York, or Brooklyn. But Philadelphia, Mount Airy, that neighborhood, I knew about it. And there, was interacting all the time with rabbis and rabbinical students. And so the idea of going to rabbinical school started to percolate in me. But I moved from Philadelphia back to Western Mass because of a relationship and friends, and I feel much more at home in New England. And I was here for about 8 years, 7 or 8 years, and then I returned to Philly. You see, I have a lot of going somewhere, leaving, returning. This is like a theme in my life. Becoming a physical therapist, leaving it, returning to it. Going to Israel, it's like I have a lot of cycles. And so I decided to go to rabbinical school because I felt like if I'm really going to stay in America, then I want to serve the Jewish community. I want Jews in America to get a feeling of what I experienced in Israel, of the cycle of the week and the holidays and the way that the Torah, our texts, our history, our mytho-history is part of our lives, part of our consciousness. And I wanted to transmit that to Jews here.
Yes.
And being a rabbi, I work with, as a physical therapist, you work with bodies, but you also, of course, work with souls.
Right.
As a rabbi, it's maybe more explicit, you know, and you work also with community and the interface between our community and other communities.
Right.
So being a rabbi is a much broader field of work than being a physical therapist. I just felt like physical therapy wasn't meeting me in all the places that, I mean, I wasn't able to express myself in all the ways I wanted to. The reason I moved to Philadelphia was because there was a very active Jewish renewal community, a creative and social justice, active in social justice and committed and creative and like, I was leaving Jerusalem at that point, okay? And it was in Jerusalem that I got into Judaism because the camp that I went to wasn't religious. The camp that I went to got me to Israel. The kibbutz didn't get me into Judaism. The kibbutz was a wonderful way of life, but my spiritual evolution, like, that was sort of an independent thing that happened while I was in Israel. And when I was this was in my 20s, I moved to Jerusalem because I was drawn to that energy. Tel Aviv and Jerusalem are like two different planets. They're an hour apart, and now there's a high-speed train, makes it really easy. But I felt very alienated in Tel Aviv. But there I had a spiritual awakening, which I wouldn't say was related to Judaism. It was just my own. I believe that all spiritual awakening is very personal. And I think that we have an awakening and then we may attach it to a certain context. So for me, I feel my spiritual awakening was independent of the fact that I'm a Jew. But because I am a Jew, I use my Judaism to support my spirituality and my relationship with God. Right? You could use anything, but being a Jew, the sensible thing is.
But that's a great way of saying it, and I think that people can relate to that. You know, that it does come from within you, and if you have a context for it, that can be extremely helpful. Yeah. When you were in Israel, you were part of many different groups, Israeli-Palestinian Peace and Justice groups, and Jewish renewal community there as well. So I'm assuming that's a lot of what you're bringing here to this community, what you brought back to America. Rabbis for Human Rights, Seeds of Peace, the Sulha Peace Project, which brings Israelis and Palestinians together. All of that you're bringing back to America. And now, to jump forward a little bit, you end up here in Brattleboro at the congregation here. And can you tell us the name?
Oh, Shir HaHarim, which is the Song of the Mountains.
I love that. Yeah, that's beautiful. Which is what this is.
Yeah,
it's all of our mountains. And you're the rabbi and the cantor?
Yeah.
You are.
Yeah.
And was that, as you said, you had some singing in school, but was that part of your practice, part of your learning?
Well, I think a lot of people are drawn to Jewish community or to becoming rabbis because they like to sing.
Oh, interesting.
I really think that and so it's not like I'm not the cantor, but I do the singing. I lead the services. I mean, like I like to sing. So if I couldn't sing, I don't know that I would have chosen to become a rabbi, because for me, singing the prayers is such an essential part of my practice.
That's really beautiful. That's good. It's also good to know. I mean, it's really interesting that that's part of the draw for you as well, as to express in that way. Also, this last year, actually, you've been very involved in the community. You did a wonderful thing with the kids at the high school for Fiddler on the Roof. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Well, people have been following in the papers, there was some controversy over whether or not they would do Fiddler on the Roof, because there was a concern about it being cultural appropriation, and then the Rebecca Kirsten, who is the theater head of the department, reached out to me last June asking me what did I think of that. She didn't want to offend, and I said, no, please do Fiddler. I mean, how else are people going to get to know anything about Jews? You know, like I think that acting anyway is about taking on a role that isn't who you are. So I brought in the Chabad rabbi also, and we both were of the same opinion. And so I met the students before the auditions, and then I went in on Diversity Day. She organized that and talked about Judaism, Jewishness, and that was wonderful. I had a wonderful time with the students who were there. And then we had, in early January, the cast was invited to come to the synagogue on a Friday night to experience a Shabbat evening, like a Shabbat service, and the rituals around Shabbat dinner. And so 17 of the students came, and that was great. That was really, it was a very joyful gathering.
It's terrific. What a wonderful way to be introduced to it too. Again, through music and through performance and that kind of thing. And I think the kids really enjoyed it a lot from what I've heard. It was a really wonderful experience for them. And something that you don't usually get. I mean, again, that's a great way to do education, is to find people in the community who can bring their skills and their experiences and talents to the kids and go off campus as well.
Yeah.
You also did, and I don't know how involved you were with the Purim Palooza.
Oh yeah, we organized that. They had done it before I came, and then for 2 years couldn't because of COVID. So we did Purim online. But this year we were back at the Jazz Center. Eugene Uman gave us the space, and we had a really great party with Cajun Zydeco music, and the community was invited, and there were people from the community, from non-Jews, that came just because it was a great party.
Yeah, right. And you talked a little bit about how a big part of being a Jew in, well, I suppose in community in general, there are a lot of celebrations that you share with other people in the community too.
Yeah, I mean, back to Israel, because we made a big jump of that. I was there in the 80s for 5 years, and then I left for 21 years, and I returned there after rabbinical school and after serving a community in Maine for 5 years. I returned to Israel because I felt that pull the entire time, basically. And there I returned to physical therapy and all the activism that you mentioned. And what I love about life in Israel that I'm trying to bring here is this cycle, this feeling, you know, Shabbat, holidays, and also the Torah is a cycle that we read every year. It's not like a lectionary, it's like from the beginning to the end. And so I really want to bring that here, but also find other ways for Jews that are not praying people, or not people who would go to a service, to find a home in the Jewish community, because I get a lot of, you know, I'm a cultural Jew.
Right,
People
right.
say that I'm a cultural Jew. So they don't go to the synagogue. And I want people to understand that the synagogue is first of all, it's for all Jews, whether you're half Jewish or a quarter Jewish, or, I'm trying to generate events that you don't have to come and pray.
Yeah.
I mean, I would say I love praying, but there's many other things we can do. Like, we're going to build an outdoor oven, and we're having mini TED Talks where people are talking about whatever they're excited about. But also, and I also want the Jewish community I want the rest of the community to know that it's open. Like, you can come. You can come into the synagogue and sit down in a service, and you won't, it's part is in Hebrew and part is in English, and I explain as we go. It's not like going to a Latin mass. There's I do a lot of explaining, and it's really like there's no secrets. It's not like a secret society. So I really want the community to know that you're very welcome to reach out to me, and you're welcome to just come to a service.
Yeah, yes.
You can come late and leave early. That's what people do. They come late and leave early. It's fine. We don't have like 1 hour. Like it's not 1 hour. It's like 2 hours, 2 hours and 20 minutes, and you come when you want and you leave when you want.
That's great.
Yeah, that's the way it is, really.
That's really wonderful. And I was going to ask you about what your vision for the Brattleboro area Jewish community is. I think you've kind of explained that. I think you've talked about that, of wanting to bring more of the community into it, to have people know what's going on there.
Yes, yes, and for both for the Jews and for the people who aren't Jewish to feel like you can come and, find your place here.
Yes.
And that it's yours to create. I mean, speaking to the Jews, and I just want to say, using that word Jews, if there's any Jews listening, I know that a lot of people get very taken aback by that word, because I know that it's been used as pejoratively, but like, to me, I'm a Jew, and I'm proud to be a Jew. I'm grateful to be a Jew, and so I call myself a Jew. I don't call myself Jewish. Yeah.
Can you tell us about your t-shirt?
Yes, I wore this t-shirt today, which says "Standing Together" in Arabic on top and Hebrew on the bottom, because it's one of the movements in Israel that of Jews and Arabs together, that does work on labor law, and goes to all kinds of the demonstrations that are happening now against the government and against the limiting the powers of the judiciary. But this has been around for, I would say, probably 6 years. This particular movement, it's all over the country. It's a very broad movement, whereas some of the other things I did were more, they were smaller. There were more, meetings that weren't like political actions. But I also did political actions with rabbis for human rights, planting olive trees that had been torn up, or helping Palestinians in the West Bank harvest their olives because they weren't given enough time to do it. They had very limited permits to harvest their own olives, where they shouldn't even have to have a permit. But I could talk about
all that.
You have to have me back to talk about Israel and Palestine, or
Well, you can have your own show on BCTV.
Oh.
Yes. Think about
maybe
that.
I should do that.
Yeah, think about that, because it would be great to have even kind of a forum, perhaps, with people from other faiths coming on or talking about Brattleboro and faith. Would be fabulous.
Another one of my goals as a rabbi of this community is to help people to feel connected to Israel, which is very, very touchy. Especially now, but it's been very touchy. The American Jewish community, the non-Orthodox American Jewish community, has turned away from Israel for understandable reasons. But my connection to Israel, and I want to communicate, there are actual people there. It's not just about politics and government. I mean, if people are unhappy with the government, are they going to get up and leave the United States? And it's like, no, you probably still live here in your beautiful Vermont, even if you don't like what's happening.
Right.
So that's another goal, is to physically connect, not to I've been wanting to bring some of my friends, Israeli and Palestinian friends, on Zoom to meet with the community members.
It's a great idea. Yes, and that's something that you could set up and have that available. That is also something that could go up on BCTV.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll think about that.
It sounds to me, Rabbi Jarmon, that you've done a lot of things with activism in Israel. You've gone through rabbinical school. You've done a tremendous amount of study in your life, but it feels like what it comes down to for you is humanitarian effort, and connecting people, getting people maybe of not like minds to come together in a congregation of however that form is.
Yeah. I don't know if I would call it humanitarian. That wouldn't be the adjective I would use, but it's like just getting people, I want people to get to know each other.
Yeah.
Because everyone I've met in the community, I'm speaking now specifically of the Jewish community here, they're all very interesting people, but a lot of them don't know each other.
Right.
Yeah.
That's right. And so, yes, to introduce, well, again, working with the kids in the school is one way of doing that, and doing things on Zoom is another way of doing it, getting it up on TV.
Yeah, good idea.
Yes, it would be fabulous. Well, Rabbi, thank you so much. Thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you for inviting me, Wendy. It's very hard to condense a life. I'm getting old. It's hard to condense my life into half an hour.
It is.
Thank you for this. It's a start.
Absolutely, and I think that that we've got a really nice snapshot of what's happening, what you're doing, what you've brought with you into this community, which we really appreciate.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for being with us. Thanks to all of you for coming on today and being with us for this show with Rabbi Amita Jarmon. We're so happy to have her with us, and know that every week there's someone new from the community coming on talking about who they are and what they've done and what they're thinking about, all in half an hour. So thanks for being with us. We appreciate it. We'll see you next time.